Our next speaker is Glen Kirk. Glen's a construction manager working on Auckland's Waterview connection, which is the largest roading project ever undertaken in New Zealand. And in contrast to the strong organisational theme that Brendan talked about, Glen's is a much more personal story. It may have started in the workplace, it may have ended up delivering results in the workplace, but in between times, a lot more of the action was at a way more personal, non-work level. So please join with me in welcoming Glen to the stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. As Pam said, yes, it's quite a personal story, and one I'm pretty excited to share because I've really seen some great results from the people who report into me, having gone through this process. So I'm Glen Kirk. I live in Auckland. I've got a partner and 2 children. I have a Bachelor of Engineering from the University of Auckland, and I've also completed some postgraduate papers from La Trobe in Melbourne. I've worked in large construction projects for the better part of 25 to 20 years, both in New Zealand and Australia, and a bit of a stint in the UK. And currently, as Pam has said, I'm working on the Waterview connection. So that's a $1.4 billion job. It's a project of national significance, and it's going to complete the Western Ring Route around Auckland. And a little bit about the actual project, because we're so bloody proud of it. This is our TBM machine that we bought from Heron Connect in Germany. And on the, if this pointer works, on this side here, we've actually tunnelled all the way through for 2.4 kilometres, and we have broken the TBM in half and turned it round, and now it's just about ready to go back through. So the actual bit that does the digging is only about 12 metres long, and that's that bit there. But the backup gantry and all the bits and pieces that put the concrete shell in place is about 300 metres long, and it does a whole lot of stuff, and it's fully mechanised, and we've got a whole lot of stuff across Auckland that feed this with concrete segments and concrete culverts and all sorts of electrical stuff. So it involves, the actual project itself is a little bit more than just a tunnel. It's 4.8 kilometres of 6-lane motorway. And it's also got these amazing community features. So it's going to have a 3-metre wide cycle track for about 5 kilometres with their own dedicated bridges, a whole lot of streamworks that are going to look fantastic, and people might even be tempted to swim in them. I'm not quite sure about that. And work started in about 2012, and we are programmed to finish in 2017 when the tunnel will open, and then we've got like a 10-year maintenance period. And the people that were brought together in the organisations consist of about 7 companies. So firstly, the agency, NZTA, makes up the Well Connected Alliance, along with Fletcher Construction, McConnell Dow, Seithe from Spain, Obayashi from Japan, Becker from New Zealand, and Parcel Brinkelhoff, who mainly out of Australia, but it's an American company. So we're all together with a whole lot of different cultures, which makes for a really dynamic environment. So what am I going to talk about today? Well, as the line says, a couple of years ago I turned 40 and I was fat and extremely obnoxious. My wife will testify to that. But I'm going to talk to you about how human synergistics helped me stop the detrimental and short-sighted responses to disruptive situations I faced on a daily basis, and gave me the tools to turn those around and face them in a positive way and a sustainable way for both myself, my team, and the large environment I was working with. So before we even put a spade in the ground, it was about 300, mainly engineers, mainly men, all working together to try and get this job off the ground. But at this stage, as you can see from the picture, I also had a few personal things going on. I had some serious alcohol issues. My career had pretty much stalled. I'd been in the same position for about 10 years. I had 2 children, and at this stage my partner was seriously talking about leaving me due to the fact that the drinking was fairly much continuous. I would arrive home obnoxious. I was not in a fit state of mind to really take the children through their homework or read stories. And at work I was genuinely aggressive and confrontational, almost to the point of threatening. The kind of employee that HR hate to deal with. If there's anyone from HR here, yeah, I was that person. But I could still get results. But at what cost? That was the thing. At what cost to the people around me, not only at work, but my family. So Human Synergistics were selected by the Alliance to take us through some high performance behaviours and leadership, to give us those tools. And Darren Levy, who's down here in the front here, took me through my LSI 1 in 2012. And when we sat down together, I remember being quite relieved, quite relieved indeed. And this kind of reflected how my opinion of myself. Yes. Very high in the blue, Darren. What are you doing here? Very high in the blue. And some oppositional stuff and a little bit of perfection and some conventionalism. But I am an engineer. And there is certain rules and things we need to follow, and we are conventional. We've got set patterns we need to follow. The problem was then Darren showed me what my team, my boss, and my colleagues thought of me, which was this, and I was like, are you serious, Darren? And I actually thought that my direct reports and colleagues were my mates. Like we were mates, and the rest of the project, we were going to beat the rest of the project to get our results and deliver our part of the project, with not a lot of thought as to the end game for the project, which was to deliver a project which had multiple streams. It had to come from Germany. We had shipping from China. We were building stuff in Italy. It all had to be shipped and flown and all brought together. I'd kind of lost track of that, and I was just hammering out results for my team. So when I looked at that, I just thought, what kind of person does my team have to work with? And I naively thought that I was actually leading them and mentoring them. And as you can see, I was pretty much vile. So it really took me some time, when I left that room with Darren, it really took me some time to go back to my desk, and first of all I thought they all hated me and I was going to get them. And I thought about, well, how am I going to talk to them? What exactly, where do I go from here? Because it looked pretty grim. And Then Darren and I got back together. We carried out a series of one-on-ones, and I finally read the book he'd been giving me, the second one. And so I looked at what was driving that behaviour for me. What was really driving that? I'm an educated guy. I've worked on these projects before. The project I worked on before was 5 times the size of this. I had been successful, but I'm not quite sure if I was always successful in the relationships around me. So we looked at what was really driving that, and when it came down to it for me, a large part of it was the frustration that stemmed from the style of my immediate line manager. I wanted him to make decisions faster and in a more open and timely manner. Rather than addressing this constructively, I let the frustration show by being disruptive and at times very aggressive, both with him and directly in meetings, and that would just suck the energy out of any meeting or any process where you were trying to get to a solution. It was also, the frustrations also stem from the accumulation of 7 different company cultures and nationalities. The organisation structure often meant there was no clear decision maker, so everyone was flat, which made getting a decision very difficult. Everything had to be negotiated, almost in triplicate. And a lot of these decisions then had to go back to their home companies, often in another country, and come back. So it would take a lot of collaborative talking, and you would need to take a lot longer, leave a lot more lead-in time to get an answer in the end. Multiple issues at this point were just piling up. There were recruitment issues, there were procurement issues in multiple countries, design issues, competing construction teams. To get a $1.4 billion job off the ground in this country with limited resources took an enormous amount of energy from a lot of different people. And my default mechanism for dealing with disruption was to get very aggressive and confrontational in order to get the right decision for my team. So I would basically railroad people to get what I wanted so my team could move on. And it was quite a large team. I have 15 degree qualified people, 15 supervisors and up to 200 staff, and we represent about a quarter of the project. So at that time there's multiple teams trying to do the same thing. Not as disruptively as me, of course. But I couldn't see any other way because you've got a time frame, you've got limited cash flow from the government, and you need to really move fast. The problem with that behaviour was it burnt a lot of bridges, and those bridges will not be able to get built again in a lot of cases. It's also not sustainable for a long period of time. I developed health issues, my blood pressure went through the roof. I turned to food and drink as a way of managing my stress. And while my senior managers put up with this behaviour for a couple of years because I could get things done, in the end I faced disciplinary action, and after a series of 3 interviews with the project director, the operations manager from Fletcher Corporate and HR from Fletcher Corporate, I ended up with a final written warning. So I was in serious trouble. Final written warning. I'm 40 years old. I've got a mortgage. I've got young children. I've got a wife who wants to leave me because I'm obnoxious and I'm a drinker. And I'm just about to lose my job. So I needed to do something. At that time, I'd spent most of my days in a really agitated state at work, which consumed a considerable amount of energy. And at the end of the day, I would drink to actually go to sleep at night because I was so pent up with frustration. So what did I do to turn this around? Because I'd already been through the LSI process with Darren, and a lot of the answers from the one-on-ones and the Human Synergistics Self-Development Guide has actually got quite a few tips for dealing with this and a great framework. By this time, my actual line manager had taken up another role within the company. And I'd always liked him and respected him. He just didn't know it, and I felt incredibly ashamed because I'd contributed to his move. I was just frustrated by his style. So in order to move on, I have taken the view that the decision-making style was not a personal affront against me. It was possibly just something he had to deal with, and something potentially he had to work on. I have worked hard on maintaining my awareness of my emotional state when in confrontational situations. This is a lot harder than it seems because it's human nature just to take things personally. It's about being mindful and purposeful. And those are the things I concentrate on now, making sure I'm mindful in any situation I go into and making sure I've got a purpose to resolve that conflict situation. And also ensuring the situation is depersonalised, to ensure decisions are based on sound reasoning, not emotive, and not to use aggressiveness or bullying to get what you want, as that behaviour does not create the right working environment or enable people to grow and excel. I also carried out a human synergistics exercise called Focus Forward, where I asked for regular feedback from my colleagues. I found this incredibly hard at first, but it became easier over time and not very time-consuming. And this gave me an unbiased view of how I was tracking. I worked on opening my team up to the greater project, so I was not the sole face of the team. And opening the team up was also about trusting and empowering people who reported to me. This has been good for the wider team and also for those outside the team, many of whom were terrified for having to deal with me. Quite frankly, people would go out of their way actually not to deal with me, but that's, hey, that's okay. You may think these fundamental changes are fairly simple, but I'll remind you from my LSI 1 that I showed you, I actually truly believed I was doing all of this already. So slowly but surely, I changed my behaviour. I didn't get everything right straight away, and I still don't. So I've not got a slide. So this is what I did in 2014, so 2 years later. And I don't have a slide of my LSI 1, but I can report I still have the extremely high opinion of myself. But as for the LSI 2, which seems to be a bit more of an honest one, and you can see a considerable reduction in the red, and I've got quite a good growth in the blue, and the green has shrunk right down. Unfortunately, I'm still in the 75th percentile here for perfectionism, but I'm working on that. But I do stress, especially after the last couple of years of buildings in the news, that a preoccupation with detail and excessive concern with avoiding mistakes could be a good thing when building large infrastructure projects. Yeah, thank you. Especially when they have to last 100 years. So, proof of change. This is a recent photo of my son and I after a kava ceremony in Samoa. And it's also proof about what happens when you drink too much kava. So what have I learned? Yeah, what have I learned? Because I've kind of reflected on what drove that change. And then what did I do to turn that round, which probably wasn't as succinct as possible because I had a bit of a technical glitch. But What have I learned? I've learned that the Human Synergistics have a framework with a number of behaviours that can be adopted to improve your performance, and they're backed up by 20 years of statistics. These behaviours are primarily meant to be used at work, but they can also be used at home to improve your overall lifestyle. I now relish the opportunity to work on issues that require robust decision making in challenging and complex situations involving multiple decision-making streams and people and departments. That was the bit I hated. That was the bit that I railroaded. But now I see that as a challenge and something interesting. And I go into these situations with a purposeful way now. I'm not perfect, but I've got a plan before I go in there. And I can mentor the other people in my team, and I can change the behaviours within that meeting to get us back on track if we are going slightly sideways or detrimental. I deal with difficult conversations and decisions in a calm, logical, and most important, a respectful way. I still drive hard for the results. The key difference is how I do it. I believe my direct reports are also gaining benefit from my changed approach, and they have gone from strength to strength in their own right. I've got some fantastic results for some of the people that reported to me with like-minded LSI results. And I'm happy to say that since starting Human Synergistics, while it's not a dieting organisation, I have lost 25 kgs over the last 2 years. I'm finally fit enough to go surfing again and have started learning guitar with my daughter for just over a year now. And we played our first guitar recital on Sunday afternoon. And when I went backstage to practice and get mic'd up, I realised I was the tallest in the room. And at a shade under 5'9", I don't think that's ever happened to me before. But yes, I was introduced as one of the participants' parents, and that older people can learn as well. Thank you very much. From a humanistic perspective, I joined the charity organisation Engineers Without Borders, so that's to help me do that humanistic point which I was terrible at. And so I ran the half marathon about a week ago, raising money for Engineers Without Borders. And I've also going to do a 200-kilometre bike ride next week for the cancer research. And me and a small group of people have raised $20,000 for that worthwhile cause. So I'm trying to work on some of the things, not necessarily at work, because you don't always get the opportunity to do that at work. So I'm trying to do that outside, and it's been really fun. So at the moment, I'm engaged and challenged at work every day. And I'm also a valued member of our leadership team. And we're just about to go under change at work, so I think there's some good things coming up. And so I don't have my own project to lead for the country at present. But I don't think that's far away. Thank you very much for listening to me.